Hi everyone, my name is Marquis and today we are going to learn how to make a delicious and easy crock pot sweet and sour chicken. With our busy schedules, crock pot recipes offer a great alternative to cooking healthy meals in a very hands-off way. You can throw your ingredients into the crock pot and let it cook while you're at work, chasing the little ones throughout the house, or doing any of the many other things you have to get done. This recipe only takes minutes to prepare, so let's get started. The recipe ingredients that you're going to need are 1 20-ounce can of pineapple chunks in juice, a cup of carrots cut in half, 1 medium onion, and we're going to chop that into half a cup, 3 garlic cloves finely chopped, half a teaspoon of ground ginger, 2 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken thighs cut into 2-inch pieces, and today we're actually going to use boneless, skinless chicken breasts, so whatever you have on hand is going to be perfect. Half a cup of reduced sodium soy sauce, half a cup of packed brown sugar, 1 medium bell pepper, red and green, a 1/4 cup of cornstarch, and a 1/4 cup of water. And then also, if you want to do some cooked brown rice or chow mein noodles or any other base that you'd like to put your meat on is fine too. Now, some of the cookware that you're going to need in the utensils. So we've got a 4.5 to 6 quart crock pot, and ours is going to be the 4.5 quart today. A sharp knife that we're going to use to cut our produce and our meats, a cutting board, a mixing bowl, and then also some plastic baggies. One other thing that we are going to use today that you don't absolutely need but is definitely a great help is we're going to be using some crock pot baggies. Again, you don't have to use this, but if you are using it in your crock pot, I guarantee it's going to be a lot easier and quicker to clean, so we are going to be using one of those today. Before we get going, remember to always clean and sanitize any surfaces and utensils you'll be using to cook your food. Also, we want to make sure your hands are washed and all fruits and vegetables are washed before cutting them. This will help to ensure that your food remains free from bacteria and your meal is safe to eat. So our crock pot is going to be doing most of our work today. All we need to do is prep our produce and our meats. So let's get started. First, we have our onion. Our recipe calls for chopped onions. However, if you have a picky eater like I do, you can leave them as slices so you can still get that flavor in your food, but they're also easy to pick out. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to take our onion and we're going to find the hairy end. So it's going to be, you've got your root and your hairy end right here. It might be a little hard to see. So you're going to place this end away from you and you're going to cut from top to bottom. So from the hairy end to the root. Okay, so next we'll lay our onion halves flat on the cutting board, and then we're going to cut off the root end, so that bottom piece that's going to be closest to you. And we're going to toss that in the trash. Alright, so now we can peel off the skin, and sometimes when you're peeling the skin off, that top layer might come off with it, and that's okay. You've got plenty of layers to work with, so don't panic. As long as you're getting the skin off, it'll be okay. Toss that out. Okay, so now our onions are peeled and they're flat on our cutting board. So next what we're going to do is we're going to start by cutting them into slices. So to do this, you're having your hairy end again still away from you down on the cutting board, and you're going to make vertical cuts down from the onion. When you're making these cuts, you're going to leave, I would say, about 2 finger spaces from the top of the onion and start cutting from there down. So we're just going to start making our cuts. And this doesn't have to be uniform, it doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you are leaving that space at the top, this should all work out okay. Alright, so now we've made our slices. So if you see, if I were to let go, it's all still connected, but you've got your slices in the onion right there. So if you want to do slices for your meal, then you would stop right there, and all we're going to do is just cut off this top part. But since we are wanting to do chopped, we are now going to make cuts, and it's going to be horizontally. So we're just going to do cuts all the way across the top, all the way across to the top of the onion, and then this is going to give us our chops. You can also use this method to do dices. If you want to dice your onion, you'll just make the horizontal cuts a little bit closer together. But as I said before, I have a picky eater, and so we're going to make these chopped onions a little bit bigger. So we're just going to cut straight across. And then you've got your chopped onion right there. Alright, so I'm just going to pull out half a cup of these chopped onions, and then we're going to go ahead and throw them in our crock pot. So that was almost half of my onion. And then we'll go ahead and add these. So I've got our crock pot liner already in there, and we've got our onions added. Now leftover and then the cut and partially used onions, these can be wrapped in plastic wrap, placed in a plastic baggie or in some type of air-sealed container, and placed in the refrigerator for up to 10 days. You could also put them in the freezer if you'd prefer, and you can keep them in the freezer for up to 6 months. And then this way you have already cut or partially cut onion ready for your next meal. So next we're going to cut our garlic, and this recipe calls for 3 garlic cloves finely chopped. So the garlic that you buy in the store in the vegetable section is usually sold in heads, so this is a head of garlic. And each head has several different lobes inside of it, which are called cloves. So we need 3 cloves for this recipe. So what we're going to do to get our garlic out is we're just going to add a little bit of pressure and push down, and you'll kind of hear the lobes inside breaking. And then the skin outside, or the peel, breaking as well. And this kind of just loosens up our garlic lobes. And we're going to pull out 3. So I've got 3 lobes here. I'm going to move the rest aside. So the rest of that garlic you can just put in the fridge for later use. Or if you want to cut it, you can go ahead and cut it now as well. So I've got our cloves here, and on the clove they still have a peel on them, so we still need to take that peel off before we get to cutting. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and take our knife, try to get a bigger knife just so there's more surface area, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be pressing down on the lobe. So you're going to lay your lobe flat on the cutting board, place your knife on top of it, and very carefully you're going to put your palm or your hand on top of the knife and press down. And I kind of wiggle the knife just a little bit, up and down a little bit, just so I can make sure that I'm peeling or breaking apart the skin. And you'll hear the skin break as you're pressing down on that. But once you're done, the skin just kind of peels right off. And you're going to do that for each of your cloves. And we'll just move that aside and throw that in the trash in just a moment. So it ends up coming out with this beautiful little clean lobe for you. Alright, so now our lobes are peeled. So next we're just going to finely chop them. And then once we're done chopping, we will go ahead and add them to our crock pot. Next we'll cut our carrots. So we're going to cut these into half. So you're just going to take your carrots, and I just cut them across this way because I like chunky carrots. You can cut them down the middle if you want them a little bit longer. That's completely up to you, however you prefer. So we're just going to cut several of these in half. Pour that into our crock pot. Okay, so I like to cut all my produce at one time, so that way when I need it later in the recipe, it's already prepared. So even though we won't be using our bell peppers immediately, I'm going to go ahead and cut them. So for the first method, we're going to take a small knife and we're going to cut all the way around the top of the bell pepper. So you're just going to put that knife in and cut in a circle. Because bell peppers are very easy to cut, you don't have to apply a lot of pressure. So just make sure you have the hand that's holding the pepper near the bottom, so that way you can avoid cutting yourself. So once you've made that cut all the way around, you're just going to gently kind of wiggle and pull out the top of the bell pepper, and all the seeds will kind of come along with it. So next we're just going to go ahead and slice our pepper, and all you've got to do is just slice down. I like to kind of slice mine in half, so that way less risk of cutting myself. And then we're just going to cut it into slices. And so we do want chopped bell peppers, so we're going to take all of our little slices here and we are going to cut them. Again, if you've got a picky eater, you can leave them sliced, so that way they're very easy to pick out and you still got that flavor. Right, so now our red bell pepper is chopped. Alright, so next we've got our green bell pepper. So with our second method, what we're going to do is we're going to lay the bell pepper down and we're going to cut off both ends. So we're going to cut off the top and the bottom of the pepper. So what you'll do next is you're just going to make a cut along one side of the pepper, and then you can just pull it apart. And then we'll chop these up, just like the last pepper. Okay, so we have our red bell pepper already bagged up, so we're going to go ahead and add our green bell pepper. And we're going to go ahead and put these in the fridge for now because we are going to add them to our meal a little bit later. The last ingredient we need to prepare before we get everything cooking is our chicken. So again, we need 2 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken thighs, and we're using the breast today. So we're going to go ahead and cut these into 2-inch thick pieces. Okay, now our chicken is cut, so we can add it to our crock pot. And for most of my recipes, I like to cut my produce first and then my raw meats just to avoid contaminating any fruits or vegetables. Another helpful option would be to designate separate knives and cutting boards while you're cooking for meats and produce. So if you have produce that's not going to be cooked, be sure to either use a separate cutting board and utensils or wash off the contaminated surfaces with soap and water before you cut your produce. Even though in this particular recipe the vegetables will be cooked with the meat, some of the vegetables won't be cooked as long in this recipe, so I'd rather be careful not to contaminate them just in case. Now, before we can start cooking our prepared ingredients, we need to make and add in our sauce. Our first step is to separate our pineapples from the juice. However you prefer to do this is fine, just make sure to keep the juice from within the container as we'll need this for our recipe. Do make sure to wipe off or wash the top of the container beforehand, just to make sure there's no dirt or bacteria getting into the can when you make these cuts. So I'm going to go ahead and pour the juice in this mixing bowl, and we're going to use it to make the sauce in just a moment. So now that we have our juice strained, we're going to store our pineapple chunks for later use. Typically when you store cut fruit in the fridge, you want to put it in an airtight container, and you can absolutely do this for your pineapple. However, since it will only be in there for a couple of hours today, I'm just going to place a plastic baggie over the can, and this will act as our lid. I like to dirty the least amount of cookware as possible when I cook because I'm the one that has to clean it up later. So this is what we're going to do today for our pineapples. Now back to our sauce. So we're going to mix our soy sauce, brown sugar, and pineapple juice together in this mixing bowl. So we've got our soy sauce and our pineapple juice and our brown sugar. And stir that up real good. So before we add our sauce to our crock pot, I'm going to also add in our ground ginger. So we had a ½ teaspoon of ground ginger, and we'll just kind of sprinkle that over our chicken and our vegetables in our crock pot. And then finally we can add our sauce. And that's it. Now we just let our crock pot do the cooking for 7 to 9 hours or until the juice coming out of the chicken is no longer pink. So we're going to set our crock pot to low. If you're worried about your chicken being fully cooked, you can also use a meat thermometer to make sure your chicken is cooked to an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Now with this recipe, we're going to use the last 30 minutes of cook time to add in the pineapple and peppers. So I'm going to let this cook on low for about 7 hours, and then I'll add these ingredients in for the last 30 minutes. So our total cook time today will be 7.5 hours. Since this chicken is cooking in its own juices, you shouldn't have any problems with it drying out if you're cooking it closer to the 9 hours. Don't worry, everything should cook fine. With that said, I'll see you back in 7 hours. Welcome back. It's been 7 hours and our crock pot is smelling amazing. So now we just have 2 final steps to finish it off. First, we're going to grab our pineapple and bell peppers from the fridge. And we're going to pour these ingredients into our crock pot, cover it, and increase the heat now from low setting to high. And then we're going to let this cook for about 20 minutes. Okay, so now our pineapple and peppers have been cooking for about 20 minutes. And we're going to add in our final step, which is our cornstarch and our water. So you need a 1/4 cup of both cornstarch and water, and we're going to mix these together and add them into our crock pot. So now we're going to let this cook for an additional 10 minutes, and then our meal will finally be ready. So our chicken is done and it smells delicious. Today we are serving our chicken over this bed of brown rice. Some other options might include riced cauliflower, lo mein, more vegetables, or anything else you'd like to pair with this. You can also use a variety of other vegetables in the crock pot as you're cooking, such as broccoli, snow peas, water chestnuts, and any other vegetables you may like. And doing this will also help to kind of bump that vegetable intake during the day. If you'd like more delicious and easy recipes, please like and subscribe to our channel to follow RHN WIC. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy your crock pot sweet and sour chicken.